Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in on this Monday night. So I'm just here to talk really, really quickly about the Fund Abortion Not War community. It's multiple things. Like, I thought of it as a project. There's a big campaign component to it. But at the same time, what I think it especially provides is organizations and individuals that individually are getting targeted for speaking out against imperialism, against genocide within healthcare, and Fund Abortion Not War provides many of us. I'm with an abortion fund, Midwest Access Coalition, provides more of a collective base of power and unification to come at what all of us in reproductive healthcare, I think, have been seeing or are here to talk more about and learn. So wanted to just go over very quickly this component. So Fund Abortion Not War, what is it? It came about as prior to post-October 7th, organizations that in many cases were already speaking out against colonization, global imperialism, reproductive harm, and trauma occurring globally. Many of those organizations saw post-October 7th in 2023 now greater attention coming at us from the Zionist foundation that we know does fund and exist so much within healthcare, within elected politics, within all of these spaces. So as a group and collection of abortion providers, abortion funds, doulas, midwives, practical support organizations, mutual aid organizations, and harm reduction, together as a collective, we got together and have a couple of different elements of this campaign that we were able to achieve. First and more prominent, what a lot of folks saw were national billboards. We had those in Atlanta, Chicago, Columbus, and then Times Square even. We had digital, a combination of digital and print. So these were billboards that the color choice wasn't accidental. We wanted people to think and associate, hey, why is reproductive care? Why is so much other care thought of and viewed from this lens? And why is speaking out against war antithetical to supporting reproductive care? So we had billboards generated in 4 cities to get this conversation, to get this topic flowing more heavily than it is already. We also launched, and I will be dropping these links, a website in which we include a lot of community education, not just on Palestine, but on contexts surrounding the world where reproductive genocide, global trauma has been occurring, and where as individuals, as organizations, many of us have already been speaking out. But again, we wanted a collective unified front to be able to do this. And then also we have a merch component, which was great. Shout Your Abortion designed merchandise for us, has been hosting it on their website. And that merch was another component that came into play within our social media campaign. We have, as I mentioned, it's a collection of abortion funds, abortion providers, doula midwifery orgs, harm reduction orgs. Together, we all collectively posted an Instagram post that we started running. I believe it was the second week of April was when those came. And we worked within the community of celebrities and influencers that have already been speaking up for abortion access. Folks that are with abortion funds, that are on boards, folks who individually have been speaking up, artists who have been supporting not only Palestine, not only Congo and Sudan, but have also been talking about their own abortion stories simultaneous to all of this. So working with those communities of folks who are seeing the connections that so many of us have seen, that have grown up with, that are what creates part of the reason why we're also in this space, taking up space. And so something we just wanted to show here was what we've been able to accomplish through this, which is awesome. The amount of information we've been able to generate, the fact that close to 200 people registered for a webinar on a Monday night to hear more about Haiti and collective reproductive liberation, that's wonderful. So we just wanted to show a little bit about what Fund Abortion Not War is. Your link tonight also will enable you to enter our 2 other Zoom panels, which you'll get information emailed to you about. And this is hopefully just this is just the start of this collective conversation and this push that so many of us have been having, but have been dramatically and excessively silenced the whole time. And just a couple of parameters for discussion here that I know Musa is going to reiterate as well. When we talk about reproductive justice, it's not just the right to have children, it's the right to not have children, and to raise them in safe and sustained communities. So from a base level, we want to bring this back to that what we choose for ourselves on Turtle Island is what gets reflected for other people in their spaces, simultaneous to us. And we need to recognize the internationality of this, and that when we think about solidarity, again, it's not just us. It's not just the area we are currently in and that's colonized. It is everywhere else that's being impacted. And then also drawing into a conversation of imperialism and capitalism, discussing how it is, we see this especially between North-South, North and imperialist and South-Southern periphery spaces, and that it is under this capitalistic system that we are trying to operate we're trying to be able to further healthcare access to people, and how these systems are just, they're only at odds. And until one of them gets taken down, the ability for us to see success and true reproductive liberation isn't going to get to be realized for everybody. All right. So then lastly, why are we here specifically? Because in part, what we have seen, especially those of us that are in reproductive spaces and in reproductive fields, is the level at which Zionism does permeate this area. And when Zionism permeates an area, it's not just Palestinians who suffer. It is folks who are in the global South in the US. It's folks who are imprisoned, who are being targeted by massive forces through weaponry, through processes that the Zionist regime has perfected. So that is why, while this is also a massive threat to Palestinian reproductive freedom, Zionism is a threat to all forms of reproductive freedom. And I will be dropping some links in as well for the merchandise and for our main site, so you can find out more information. But that is just a little bit on Fund Abortion, Not War. Back to you, Musa.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate that. And with that, I want to go into our panel, and we're actually going to kick it off first with a poll. I want to ask everyone a question. Actually, I skipped something. I want us all to make some agreements here in this space together. The first agreement is from me to myself, and that is that as facilitator, I reserve the right to kick anyone out should they act up and out of term. Let's start there. Second, we're all agreeing to treat each other with respect, and we will not tolerate sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, American exceptionalism, or Zionism in this space. This is a space to learn and exchange with one another in respectful dialogue, right? Most importantly, learn how we can support the liberation of Haitians. And so with that said, we actually have a poll that I would like for everyone to answer. I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the screen, or I think maybe Marie might have that. And basically, I'm going to also type it in the chat. Y'all got to work with me. You know, I'm in my uncle years now, and so me and technology. Here it is. All right. So can everyone see the poll? We're going to take about 1 minute. The question is, how familiar are you with Haiti's history and current struggles? And I would like for you to rank this between 1 to 5, essentially. And if there's any specific pieces, significant things about Haiti's history, politics, or culture that stands out to you that you do know, please feel free to type it in the chat and let us know where you're coming from. I want to gauge the room. It's okay if you don't know anything at all about Haiti. I prefer to say Haiti, which is actually the original name of the island, Haiti, more or less. So I see here, we got most everyone has taken the poll. I'm going to give y'all 5 more seconds if anyone else wants to submit their answer. We're doing good so far. All right. I feel like I'm on a game show. All right. The poll has ended, y'all. So we had nobody in the room who said they know nothing at all about Haiti, period. Love to hear that. We had about 30% who said they've heard a little bit. Maybe they need to learn some more. The majority, almost 60%, said that they're familiar, but they need to brush up. 1 person in the room said expert status, baby. And then 4 people said they currently actively organize for Haitian liberation. I love that. I love to hear that. And at the end of this, we're going to return to another poll, another question to check the temperature when we're done. And so appreciate y'all. So we're going to get right into it, y'all. I will go ahead and just give a quick introduction of myself as the facilitator. My name is Musa Springer. I work with ARC Southeast. ARC Southeast is an abortion fund and reproductive justice organization serving the 6 states across the Deep South region, what I like to call the Black Belt historically. We help provide Southerners with access to abortion care and a full range of reproductive support, direct support. I'm also a member of the Black Alliance for Peace, the youth representative for Cuba's Red Barrial Afrodescendiente, and the host of Revolutionary African Perspectives on WRFG 89.3. That's WRFG.org. I am a propagandist for free, independent, local radio. And with that out of the way, I want to remind folks, while our panelists are speaking, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or queries, put it in the chat. And we're going to have our people in there looking to pull the questions out, and we'll have a full-on Q&A section at the very end where we'll be able to answer some of these questions. So just make sure you type it up and put it in the chat. So I'd like to turn it over to our panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves. And y'all, I'm so excited because these are literally 3 of the most brilliant people I know in my entire lifespan. And maybe we can just start with you, Onye, because you're the first in order on my screen. If you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself and then popcorn it to one of your other panelists for me.
Thanks. Hey, Musa. Hey, Jemima. Hey, Marina. Thank you to everybody on the call for being here and for inviting me to speak. I'm very excited to have this discussion. My name is Onyesonwu Chatoyer. I use she, they pronouns. I am an organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, a Pan-African revolutionary socialist, anti-imperialist, feminist, queer. I'm also an editor of Hood Communists with my comrade Musa, and I do a lot of Cuba solidarity work with the Vencenos Brigade and the National Network on Cuba. I am also of Haitian descent, and I will pass it to Jemima.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jemima Pierre. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be on a panel with you all and to be in conversation to talk about Haiti. I was born in Haiti, grew up in Miami, Florida, and I've been doing a lot of work on Haiti past, 15 years or so. I'm a member of the Black Alliance for Peace, the Haiti Americas team. I'm also an editor of the Black Agenda Report and columnist and a member of the Anti-Imperialist Scholars Collective. It's the new organization. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to being in conversation. Marina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marina Magloire. I use she, they pronouns. I'm so honored to be alongside 2 people that I've never met, but whose work I respect very much. A little bit about me. I am a writer, scholar, memory worker. I mostly work with Black women's stories in archives to make sure things are both preserved and interpreted in their full complexity. So hopefully I'll be bringing some of those stories to this space today. I am also in Black Alliance for Peace in the Atlanta chapter with Musa. I have that honor. And I'm a co-founder of Third World Feminist School, which is a popular education program for Black and immigrant workers in Miami. South Florida people, maybe hit me up if you want to learn more about it. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Musa.
Thanks, y'all. I appreciate that. And I appreciate y'all indulging me in the popcorn shenanigans there as well. Also, I hear it's a lot of Florida, a lot of Miami in the room, is what I'm gathering here. So when you talk about Haiti and Haitians, of course, that's going to happen, right? So shout out to the Florida comrades. A reminder, too, that ARC Southeast, we do support folks in Florida who need help accessing abortion, especially around majority Black areas in Florida. We tend to have a lot of people who seek out our support from there. So shout out to Florida. And with that, we can really go ahead and dive in with our first question. And maybe we'll start with you, Jemima, and then anyone else who would like to chime in is welcome to, or, anyone else who would prefer to go first also can let me know. And I figured we would start with some history. The first question being, what are just really some key events that mark Haiti's fight for liberation from 1804 till today that are shaping Haiti today in the current politics today? Some major points in history that you really just want to make sure our audience understands.
I guess the for me is the most recent period. Haiti has a long history from 1804. I mean, the revolution, right? And then being completely having a blockade against it over 60 years. After that revolution that ousted the Europeans and defeated white supremacy and colonialism and slavery. Haiti was occupied by the US in 1915 to 1934. For me, what's going on right now is a direct result of a number of occupations and interventions in Haiti by the US primarily, but also its proxies in the region and in Europe. It's the 2004 coup d'etat where the US Marines landed in Haiti, took Haiti's president, put him on a ship and a plane and flew him to Africa. So I wanted to really talk just specifically about that because Haiti, I think, as a nation of people that because of the series of continuous struggles has never really had time to pause and grieve any single tragedy for long. And so for me, especially when thinking about reproductive justice, we cannot talk about reproductive justice in Haiti without talking about Haitian fight for liberation and sovereignty. So what's going on here is the fact that Haiti lost its sovereignty February 2004, where the US, France, and Canada conducted a coup d'etat, which was planned in Ottawa, Canada, by the Liberal government. This coup d'etat then was then covered up by the United Nations, which basically sent what they called a peacekeeping mission, but which was a violent occupation where thousands of soldiers from all over the world were in to basically cover up a coup d'etat done by 2 permanent members of the UN Security Council. The UN occupation brought foreign soldiers that brought cholera to Haiti that killed 40,000 people and sickened 1 million, committed massive crimes, especially sexual crimes against Haitian girls and boys. And what was most important about this occupation was the creation of what they call the core group, which is a group of representatives from different foreign countries, particularly Europe, but also the Organization of American States, that basically makes all the political decisions in Haiti. So this overt military occupation, which was actually supported by a majority of the world and was participated in by a majority of the world, including the fact that the military wing of this occupation was led by Brazil and under Lula in 2004, this core group remains in place. And so today, the UN mission in Haiti is still active. The military part of it was brought down in 2017, but there's been a smaller UN mission to control Haiti that's been there ever since. In fact, today, June 14th, 2025, the UN Security Council extended the UN mandate in Haiti yet again. So everything that's happened in Haiti since 2004 has been under full US occupation of the Haiti through the proxies such as the UN. And so today, Haitian people suffer under violence, but what's important is to know that the 2004 occupation of Haiti, and that continues, should be considered a very successful counter-revolution. The US, France, and Canada were able to remove a democratically elected and popular president, bypass the country's constitution, and over the past 20 years install prime ministers, presidents, while overseeing the complete dismantling of the Haitian states. So today, the Haitian people continue to suffer violence enabled and sustained by this foreign occupation. Now we have Kenyans in Haiti. We have Arab Prince Blackwater mercenaries in Haiti. And all of these people, and we're told are supposed that the interests of these people in the so-called international community are humanitarian. But when we speak of gangs in Haiti, we must recognize that the most powerful gangs in Haiti is the US government and its subsidiaries, such as the United Nations, the core group, the Caribbean community of lackeys, the Organization of American States, the Kenyan mercenaries. So for me, the only enduring solution is to understand this history. And the solution is also to the crisis is to think about Haiti as its crisis as one that needs decolonization, because nothing short of self-determination, full sovereignty, and control over resources can free colonized people. So I'll stop there and we can go on.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And I remember the first time I learned about the core group, you almost feel like a conspiracy theorist of sorts when you're like, wait, it's an unelected body of European leaders dictating the politics of another country. Onye or Marina, would either one of y'all want to add on?
Yeah, I really appreciate that overview from Jemima. And it's also really important to highlight the point made that it's literally just been like centuries of foreign intervention in Haiti with very little breaks for the Haitian people. You have the US military occupation, direct foreign control from 1915 to 1934. Then they get like a 20-year break. And then from 1957 to 1986, there's a Duvalier dictatorship that was extremely repressive. Then the Haitian people are engaging in grassroots organizing. The Duvalier dictatorship is pushed out. You have Aristide come in because of the popular organizing of the masses of people in Haiti. And then Aristide is overthrown again, or overthrown for the first time in 1991. The Haitian people are continuously resisting the succession of military dictatorships that are imposed on them. They are fleeing the nation en masse because of the conditions created by US intervention. And we see the internment of Haitians at Guantanamo. Haitian people are actually the very first population that was housed in concentration camps in Guantanamo. Then the Haitian people, again, are continuously fighting back throughout this period against a series of puppet governments. They bring Aristide back, and then Aristide is overthrown for the second time. So like all throughout these centuries of Haiti's independence, you see a continuous process of foreign domination led by the United States, destabilizing Haiti over and over again as the Africans there are struggling for their sovereignty. And so you cannot understand conditions in Haiti without understanding the influence of imperialism. The narrative that we always get about Haiti in the belly of the beast is that it's a failed state, that Haitians are incapable of governing themselves, that it's like constant anarchy and chaos. But that anarchy and chaos is imposed from the outside deliberately to destabilize the nation and to repress Haitian people.
Wow. Thank you both so much for those really powerful overviews. And I think maybe one thread that I want to pull out of what you're both saying is the fact that a country that does not have full sovereignty, as Haiti has not had throughout various periods in its history, cannot exercise reproductive justice because people aren't able to make kind of basic daily decisions about their own bodies and their own health and their own, like, the livelihood of their children. So, I mean, I think something that I think about a lot is the way in which the Haitian Revolution was actually in the service of reproductive justice, because I'm joining this call actually from Martinique, which is, I'm half Martinican. It is a sister island French former or current French colony, as Haiti is a former French colony. But at the same time as Haiti was fighting for its independence that it won in 1804, Martinique and Guadeloupe were also fighting and did not win. But one story from that time period was actually of an enslaved woman revolutionary named Solitude, who was from Guadeloupe, and she was pregnant at the time that she was fighting, and she was caught, and they waited for her to have the baby and then executed her the next day. And that's actually what the Haitian Revolution was fighting against and successfully fought against. So, I mean, I think no matter how far back we go in history, we see Haitians fighting for reproductive justice. And that goes even further back into slavery, to the knowledge of enslaved women who helped other women have abortions because they didn't want to bring children into the conditions of enslavement. And that is a huge part of Haitian history as well. And I would love to know more about the types of remedies and cures and plant knowledge that people were using. So if anybody has that in their own family, maybe put it in the chat, or has experiences with that, maybe put it in the chat, or maybe Jemima or Onye, you also know, but I also wanted to lift that up as well.
Thanks, y'all. I appreciate that. And I can see the common thread here is definitely an assault to the sovereignty of Haiti and the Haitian people, which is going on multiple centuries now at this point, as you all highlighted. And another period that I think is important to understand what's going on, of course, I think you all kind of touched on it, but getting us up to the present is sort of between like the 1960s to the late 1990s, right before we get into the 2004 moment you mentioned, Jemima. But I feel like these are really important years to really understand the reproductive oppression in Haiti, both in terms of the struggles and the movements that are taking place, and also and the resistance, but also the oppression. Can one of you start us off with maybe sharing some information about this period specifically, and especially if there's any like movements or particular moments that you would like to highlight. And I'll open it for anyone who wants to go first.
I suppose I can talk about the late 80s. I think, I think Onya talked about the Duvalier dictatorship that was fully funded and, well, not fully funded, but supported fully by the US because Duvalier was anti-communist. And under him, you have the most brutal repression under the Tonto Macoute, which were the brutal police, so-called police force, like, outside of the regular police force. And I want to talk about, I want to get to the 90s because I see this anti-Aristide stuff in the chat that I want to address in a minute. But Duvalier received a lot of funding from the US because it supported this repression of the Haitian people. In the late 1980s, when the people were able to remove him from power in 86, what the military took over, and I forgot which, and the US supported that military, including, the Duvalierists. It wasn't until I think, somebody remind me of his name, the military that got the golden parachute to leave, the military leader that got the golden parachute to leave Haiti after in the early 90s, who's still, living large from the funds of Haitians, right? Duvalier his son was removed from office in France, sent a plane for him, and he flew out and lived actually in France. His wife is still there on Twitter talking stuff about Haiti all the time, living off of the money of the people. And so what happened was, I do think one of the things that happened is after the period between 1986 and 1989, you have this big struggle. You have violence, military violence, and so on and so forth. And you have the rise of Aristide, not Aristide, but the Lavalas movement. And the class of Aristide's Lavalas movement was the peasantry and the urban poor. And what happened is when the Lavalas movement, I think that brought Aristide to power, really has been, one of the things that the US tried to do was basically not allow a particular popular movement to happen since then. And in 1989, when the elections, 1990, when the elections happened, the US actually, in an attempt, the US tried to rig the 1990 election, and in an attempt to undermine Aristide, the US exaggerated his radicalism, presenting him as a beardless Black Castro, denouncing him as a Marxist maniac who advocated class struggle. They poured 36 or $40 million into their chosen candidate, a former World Bank employee called Marc Bazin, and hoped that he would defeat Aristide. And part of that is Bazin did not win. And I think the U.S. decided after that they would never allow these kind of pre-elections. They would control the electoral process. And what happened is that the U.S. government and the Haitian ruling classes, and we also have to think about. The color and class politics in Haiti. That's really about the ruling elite, but also how it is that they really hated this dark-skinned priest who was talking about liberation theology, but who also had the mass support of the classes. Within 9 months, 1991, the CIA backed a coup d'etat, and Aristide was removed from power. And the only reason Aristide was brought back by this time, 3 years later, and was told that he could not fulfill his entire term, was because the refugee crisis, under Bill Clinton came, right? And so Clinton brought back Aristide, but by this time he was compromised, and he basically had to agree to these structural adjustment policies, which completely transformed Haiti's economic policies. And even though he tried to drag his feet, but that was the condition of his return. And that's when you have I think that moment is very important for us to think about in the early 90s, because we haven't had that kind of movement ever since. And so if you look at the WikiLeaks papers, they talk about Aristide. The Pope, the Vatican talked about Aristide still, being a voodoo priest and stuff like that. They were behind the coup d'etat. And there's all kinds of demonization. I just posted this article called How to Turn a Priest into a Cannibal. Just the U.S. imperialist media, as we can see, the way that they talk about Palestine, the way they talk about Nicaragua, the way they talk about Cuba, Venezuela, and all these places, part of imperialism is the control of the information space. And so and also the violence that's around Haiti, the dropping off of guns and so on and so forth. They did that in Ecuador. They did that in El Salvador. They did that in Nicaragua. Remember the Iran-Contra affair. So we have to think about all these things because this is the moment I think the U.S. decided, and that's why in 2003 they got together, like, we cannot allow this kind of like popular movement to rise again, and we have to control the process. And I think the moment from the late 80s to the mid 90s are really key because this is when you have a shift. Haiti's policy, the enforcement of structural adjustment policies, the fact that Haitians went from being self-sufficient, right, from the rice that they produce to the pigs under Duvalier that the U.S. government made the Duvalier government destroy all the native Black pigs and replace them with white pigs from Arkansas and things like that. Or the fact that the U.S. Clinton dumped his Arkansas rice onto Haitians and basically killed the local rice industry. The fact that you had the pushback free trade zones and factories that basically killed local production. And so I think these moments are very important because they really impact how Haitians had to see themselves, how they came up, how they were able to try and fight for not just, sovereignty and justice, but also ways to live, how mothers can feed their children or could not feed their children, send them to school and so on. So I think, I'm going to stop there because I did start with 2004, but I do think the late 80s and to the mid 90s are very key in transforming the Haitian economy in a way that set it up for other political processes that kept making it lose its sovereignty.
Thank you. I appreciate that breakdown. And just to really hone in on one thing you said, I hope listeners can go and search the situation with rice in Haiti as it relates to President Clinton, especially, who destroyed the once food sovereign Haiti so that his friends could make a lot of money importing cheap rice from the US into the island. Destroyed food sovereignty on a once food sovereign island. Onye or Marina, y'all want to add on?
Yeah, I do. I'm really glad that you brought up the point of food sovereignty, Jemima, because I do feel like that's also a really important reproductive justice issue. And I did also want to highlight the rice, the pigs, also, I guess, the role of multinational chemical corporations like Monsanto giving seeds as aid to Haiti, but they're seeds that don't propagate themselves, so you have to keep buying them. And after the earthquake, like Monsanto actually tried to donate more seeds to Haiti, and people knew what was up and tried to throw them and threw them, I think, away into the sea. So I guess just also thinking about the way that like the Haitian rural working classes have consistently been the kind of engine of Haitian sovereignty through food sovereignty, and the way that they are often under attack, oftentimes by forces within Haiti as well. In 1987, there was the Jean Labelle massacre in which Haitian farmers who were trying to resist the local bourgeoisie were massacred. So sometimes these forces come from within Haiti, but the rural Haitian working classes are a really consistent force of sovereignty that from then until now, from the Haitian Revolution until now, that also can't be ignored.
And the only thing I'd add is like at the period of the Duvalier dictatorships was a period of intense repression where there was very little space for grassroots political organizing because it was very, very violently put down. And then when you see the Haitian people push out the Duvaliers in 86, you see like a blooming of grassroots political organizing, people's organizations engaged in popular uprisings and community health efforts and literacy campaigns, all of these ways of bringing Haitians into political life. And that's where you see the Lavalas movement bloom from. As soon as the space opened up for more open political organizing, the Haitian people took advantage in order to organize to address their own concerns. And in that period that bloomed after the fall of the Duvalier dictatorship, when you see grassroots efforts to increase literacy in order to get people engaged in political work, you also start to see the people in Haiti engaging critically with the role of international aid on the island, because there has been a situation where Haiti has been forced to be dependent on international aid, where the same forces that are destabilizing the nation, that are engaging in occupation, that are putting in these repressive dictatorships, are also presenting themselves as the solution to the problems that they create. And this is the time when Haitian people are like, wait, like millions of dollars are going from US aid into these so-called public health organizations. and our health outcomes are not improving. Or these public health organizations say they are dealing with reproductive justice or say they are dealing with maternal health care, but they're charging us for basic services when our nation is like desperately poor and we can't afford. We have to choose between healthcare or food and water. And so you start to see Haitian people like challenging the entire framework of international aid and its impact on their lives, and also proposing like grassroots community-based solutions. And the response from the US always, like the Haitian people produce a Lavalas movement, they help RC get into the power, and the US responds to the organization of Haitian people as a threat to be put down. They treat Haitian people consistently as an obstacle in the way of development for private industry, of development for capital. Like that is a consistent pattern throughout US engagement with Haiti, Haitian people being treated as a surplus population that must be repressed. Any kind of political life that is expressed must be beat down. And that is part of the reason why Haiti is in the state it is in today.
Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head. And one other moment from this period that always comes to mind for me is how in the 1990s, following the 1991 coup, essentially, there was a mass exodus, there was a mass kind of refugee moment that took place. And the US president actually authorized the Coast Guard to mass grab Haitians at sea who were fleeing and actually detained them in Guantanamo Bay, occupied Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. And relating it to reproductive justice, they actually created a special military quarantine for any Haitian who was alleged to have been HIV positive or who was HIV positive. And we have cases that have been well documented of dozens upon dozens of human rights abuses that took place inside of this quarantine. And so the connections to reproductive justice are there at every step of the way, because as has been said by our panelists, if you don't have sovereignty and agency, right, you can't have reproductive freedom and justice. So moving into our next question to get us a little bit more towards the present, we've heard a lot about Haiti in the news the last few years. You know, there's always random moments where suddenly the US and the West suddenly pretends to care about Haiti, and you hear these headlines pop up. And I'm wondering if you could maybe help us understand this current situation in Haiti. I know, Jemima, you alluded to it already, but we hear a lot about the lawlessness in Haiti, the so-called gangs. I saw a headline last week that currently the puppet government of Haiti is using drones on their own people, and now Haitians are facing drone attacks. And then, of course, there's also the Haitian immigration crisis that we're hearing from the presidential administration. So how can we make sense of some of these narratives? And then how can we also understand, if in your words, I guess, the truth of what is actually happening right now? And I'll let anyone who wants to start off on that.
I can start, and then I'm sure people have stuff to add. First and foremost, there's like two things to understand about the narrative of like gangs in Haiti. One is that sometimes when they're talking about gang violence in Haiti, they're talking about the popular uprisings of Haitian people. They're talking about Haitian people fighting back continuously against foreign intervention because, like I said, Haiti has been victimized by imperialism for centuries, and Haitian people have fought back every single step of the way. And so they are always treated like something in the way, something to be repressed, something to be beat down. And so that's part of what is behind that gang violence narrative. However, the other piece of it is absolutely real. There are gangs terrorizing the masses of people in Haiti. However, those gangs are armed and backed by the very same forces that has destabilized Haiti's Haiti's democracy. Forces like, of course, the US and the core group, like the majority of guns in Haiti come from the United States, primarily from Florida, as a matter of fact, or they come into the DR and then go into Haiti, but also backed by the ruling class, like the indigenous ruling class in Haiti, the Haitian elite itself, which is a puppet of the US imperialism, but who, because of their class interests, are very interested in repressing the aspirations of Haitian people for sovereignty and for liberation and control of their own resources. And so we'll use these gangs, which again are oftentimes armed and funded by the US, by foreign interferers, to brutally repress political life in Haiti to make sure that the masses of poor and working class Haitians do not organize and overthrow that ruling elite. And so we have to understand like that gang violence narrative is a demonization of popular resistance in Haiti, but it's also a direct consequence of foreign intervention and like the puppets that benefit from foreign intervention in Haiti.
That's true. I couldn't have said it better myself. This is absolutely right. People forget like the history of armed groups comes from, first of all, the Tonton Macoute, right, in Haiti, or the gendarmerie, the police that the U.S. government set up right after it stopped, right before it ended its occupation in 1934, right? This is where the Haitian police comes from, right? And then you have that transformed into the Tonton Macoute. But the history, you're right, because even when we had, people forget that in 2020, 2021, 2019, there are all kinds of protests in the streets in Haiti, millions of people in the streets pushing against U.S. intervention, pushing against U.S. occupation. And people would, and they would report that, the elite would report that as gang. These are being directed by gangs. In fact, so much so that the grassroots were saying that we're not, this thing about us being gangs is ridiculous, right? Even writing an open letter to, I think, the racist guy who's in charge of the Organization of American States, saying that why would you say that this is a gang protest, this is gang violence when we're out in the streets protesting? So I think you're absolutely right in that. The elite have always used young, impoverished young men to basically take care of, their people who they have problems with, people who provide competition. This has been the case, for, decades in Haiti, arming young people to go basically burn down a business or take out or kidnap people, right? In order to get ransoms. In fact, I forgot his name, Brent, who's still in prison because he got caught in the kidnapping ring about 10 years ago. I forgot his first name, but it's part of the Brent family, BRANDT. And so that tells you, how much the elite have played in, funding and arming these young groups. And you can see, even though these states are behind the destabilization of Haiti, Canada, the US, they've actually put sanctions against some of these elite members of Haitian society for funding young people, for bringing arms into the country. Most of the guns in Haiti come from the US. The US really could easily put an embargo. They know everything that's going in and out of Haiti. They close Haiti's airspace whenever they feel like it. They can, the elite control the ports. So part of that, we have to understand how it is that this is a very calculated destabilization. And so we have to think about it in this way. We have to think about the fact that whenever there's a problem in Haiti, the only solution that the West always comes up with is more violence, right? So there's a problem in Haiti, let's beat them out. When the Haitians were protesting against the 1950, the 1934 occupation, the Kako movement, what did they do? This was the first time the U.S. used aerial bombing against the population, and that was in Haiti in 1919, right? So there's always been a violent response to Haitians, and it's deeply racist, right? And so part of that is this so-called gang violence. It is armed. I don't call them gangs because it actually diminishes the reality that these are armed paramilitary. A lot of them are former police officers, which the U.S. actually forced into the police after the coup d'etat in 2004, where you had these ragtag paramilitary forces who were trained in the Dominican Republic and elsewhere to come in and basically wreak havoc. And then they're basically put back into the police force to create, and so a lot of these police are corrupt. That doesn't mean all of them are, but the Haitian police has that history. If you go into WikiLeaks papers, they talk about that. They talk about how to insert them back into the Haitian police force, these extra, funded paramilitary forces. So you have that. So what's happening now actually is to think about the proliferation of these groups that are actually getting more and more powerful. And I think part of it is like they were funding this group, but I think they've become autonomous, right? Because, to rule, there's an expanding drug trade from Colombia, the U.S. If you think about the assassination of the president in 2021, the Colombian mercenaries coming through Haiti to participate in that. So they're getting funded both from the elite. And you notice the people, it's not the elite that are getting hurt, right? It's not, they live in fortresses in the hills of Haiti, right? They have their own private police. In fact, one of them, I think Bijou, is like, used to provide the ammunition and the guns to the police when he needs protection, right? So we have to think about that. The transnational elite, most of them are not Black. right? Bijou, the Haitian elite are like these Levantine and white populations that run things in Haiti in collaboration, as collaborationists with the West. I wanted to just quickly, though, talk about the immigration situation. Every time there's been an immigration wave from Haiti, it's been because of political destabilization. You cannot separate the two. The people who were coming in the 80s were because the Duvalier regime was so brutal, especially towards the end of the regime. But in the late 70s, right before he was, in early 80s, right before he was, before he was deposed, right, brought down. So you have that. You have another wave that happens after the removal of Aristide in 1991 by the CIA, where they were going after Aristide supporters and killing them in droves. You have another wave in 2004, right after the second removal of Aristide, where they really killed thousands of Aristide supporters in 2004, 2005, where the U.S. basically walked all over our constitution, brought in some old dude from Florida and made him prime minister. And then you have 2014, 2015, where things really get bad for Haitians. And that's when Haitians start coming from Brazil. And this is an important thing. And coming through the U.S.-Mexico border, what happened there was Brazil was the military force in Haiti 2004 to 2017. They ran the military wing of the occupation, starting with Lula, continued under Bolsonaro. And because of that, Brazil needed, because they were hosting the World Cup and the Olympics, they brought in cheap Haitian labor. They made it easy for Haitians to get to Brazil to work as cheap labor. But when Brazil had an economic downturn, Haitians were dealing with so much racism, anti-Black racism in Brazil, they decided to leave. It crossed by foot 7 countries through Central America to get to Southern California in order to be able to get in and find a way in. So every single aspect of migration really comes from the destabilization of Haitians. But the other part is, the most important part, is the racism of the representation of Haitians. Look, there has been 200 years of horrible representations of Haitians. There's the New York Times article from 1921 with the title, Haitians Ate a U.S. Marine, right? Like things about, cannibalism and all this stuff always comes out. You just remember, just last year, J.D. Vance talking about Haitians eating pets, right? Or saying barbecue, the gang leader saying that his name's because he barbecues people, right? So these anti-Black and racist representations of Haiti really impact how it is that Haitians are seen as like AIDS carriers, pet eaters, and so on and so forth, that actually impact how they're treated by immigration, right? How they're seen as like, dirty and so on and so forth. So they remember before Guantanamo, they were put in Crone Detention Center in Florida, in Miami, right? And illegal because everyone has the right to ask for asylum. They also, Trump used Title 42, which was an old law, which was about, bringing during the COVID virus. They used Title 42 to keep Haitians out into Haiti to say, basically it's like they're bringing disease into the country, so we can't let them in. So there's a combination of things of like why migration occurs. It occurs because of nonstop, U.S. intervention and occupation, but also there's a deep racism that goes back to 1804 when the Haitians won the revolution, and the representation of Haitians that continue to this day as like these savages who can't rule themselves, and that the only way to deal with them is violence.
Thank you, Jemima, for that. And I'm going to come to you next, Marina. I also wanted to just note for everyone who's tuned in, the anti-Haitian tropes, like Jemima said, they go back very, very far, and they're historical. And they also present themselves in the U.S. in places with deep Haitian influence, like New Orleans. If you recall, in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, when Black people from New Orleans were called refugees in our own country, it was the exact same anti-Haitian tropes that they practice so-called voodoo and that they're going to eat your dogs and cats. These very, very racist tropes are present even in areas that are just influenced by Haiti. And I think that's also important to point out. Marina, I want to come to you for this next question to kind of carry on the thread, because this is so wonderful so far. But I want to kind of think about vulnerable populations in Haiti right now, in the midst of everything that's been described. When we think of women, garment workers, peasants, and sort of rural workers, children, LGBTQ folks, could you talk to me a little bit about how these populations and these people might be impacted and just, I think, in general, kind of start us off on that path.
Sure, thank you. And I think this actually dovetails really nicely with the points that Jemima just brought up about the anti-Haitian tropes and the points that you brought up about the way that Haitian culture is almost like this stain that follows people throughout diaspora and affects their material conditions, even the mere affiliation with Haiti in the case of New Orleans. But these narratives of, especially around Haitian spirituality labeled voodoo, which nobody actually, practitioners do not call it that. They say that they serve the spirits, or it's called voodoo, like not with the, here, I'll put it in the chat. Voodoo, not voodoo. Thank you. But this spirituality as a liberatory spirituality without which the Haitian Revolution could not have happened. People, were coming from many different cultures within Africa, many different religions within Africa, including Christianity and Islam, but also many different religions from West Africa and Congo. They had to essentially amalgamate and create new spirits that would help them win their revolution. And these are spirits that are hot. These are fighter spirits. These are spirits that use machetes. These are spirits that use fire. And, I think, unfortunately, there is some recognition from the Western world that actually is effective. And that's why these like anti-Haitian and specifically anti-Vodou narratives exist. And these anti-Vodou narratives are also kind of directed, especially towards Haiti's LGBTQ community, the M community, as it's called there, because Vodou has been known to be quite flexible, I think, around issues of gender and sexuality. Spirits possess people regardless of their gender. So a spirit of the opposite gender might possess you. There are quite a lot of LGBTQ practitioners of Vodou in Haiti, I think. For this reason, people because certain spirits are also known to be more friendly to queer people as well. It's also a religion that's decentralized and where women and queer people can kind of reach prominent places of leadership. So that has made it actually a target for a lot of the explosion of Protestant missionary culture that has happened, especially in the last decade or so since the earthquake. Protestant culture, the same Protestant missionaries like Pat Robertson, for example, who said that Haiti made a pact with the devil, and that's why the earthquake happened. This same narrative is being used to evangelize Haitians, and it's a deeply anti-queer, deeply anti-abortion, deeply anti-woman type of discourse. And it is really deeply linked, these same missionaries that are harming, that are responsible for narratives that create violence towards queer people are also responsible for this kind of nexus of anti-abortion rhetoric as well. So that's my start in the conversation. I'm sure Jemima and Onye have a lot more to contribute, but I'll stop there.
I wanted to just quickly talk about violence against imperialism and violence. One of the things that we don't talk enough about is the MINUSTA, the UN occupation of Haiti. There's a really wreaked havoc in the Haitian community, especially in the rural areas. If you were driving through Haiti during that time period, there were UN bases everywhere in every small town. And so one of the things that emerged, and that's why there's an Institute for Justice and Democracy in Haiti, actually sued the UN because of all the children left behind, fathered by the UN. There was so much sexual exploitation, hundreds and hundreds of children. And there's a story, and I'm going to put it in after I'm talking to there. There've been reports on this, right? Like thousands of children, 12 and 13-year-old girls, violated and impregnated by these UN soldiers. One girl said, they put a coin in your hand and a baby in your belly, right? Things like that. And there are even videotapes of boys getting gang raped by UN soldiers. And the UN has never been brought to, none of these people the UN has not been brought to justice for what it's done, for the havoc it has wreaked. The IJDH actually sued the UN to get these soldiers to actually pay for the children that they left behind in Haiti. They didn't win the case, but that's one of the things that we actually have to think about in terms of just like occupation. Foreign occupation also means this ongoing nonstop sexual exploitation, and what happens then to the vulnerable, to the young girls and boys who are continuously impacted by this, and then they're impacted for life because they're left with children and so on. And so I just wanted to remind us that UN occupation is not only it's a brutal one, it's an environmentally disgusting one because they were dumping feces in the Haitian waters. That's how cholera spread and killed a bunch of people. So we have to, think about that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate the two of you. And I think it's so important to bring that conversation into this talk as well, especially as I know in a few questions, we're also going to talk about the connections to Palestine. And when we think of this kind of sexual and gendered violence, that's a very strong connection as well. And really, I would guess we could start with you on this one, Onye. A few years ago, we saw very horrific images of Haitian migrants being brutalized at the US border under the Biden administration. I have a particular image I can really not get out of my head of these ICE agents who were on horseback, literally whipping Haitian migrants. I mean, it was slavery in 2022, 2021, essentially. And now, a few years later, we have seen a continued escalation of anti-Haitian migration policy under Trump. So an escalation of the very intense, horrific images and practices we saw under Biden and others has now continued under Trump. So I'm wondering if maybe it's already been touched on by Jemima. So I'm wondering maybe, Onya, you could just build upon how the legacy of imperialism has shaped this migration crisis that we're now hearing so much about in the US. And if possible, too, maybe tie that migration crisis into reproductive oppression, policing, surveillance. And on the flip side, how should we be thinking about supporting Haitian migrants as this continues?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that the US continuously creates the conditions that drive mass migration from Haiti and then turns around and criminalizes and dehumanizes Haitians fleeing those conditions. Like we already talked about how the Haitian people got arrested in there 2 times. The US got them out 2 times in 1991, the first time, leading to tens of thousands of Haitians fleeing the island because conditions had become unlivable because of the actions of the United States, and the United States responded by interning them in a concentration camp at Guantanamo. It responded with a media campaign demonizing Haitian immigrants and blaming them for being vectors, so-called vectors of HIV in the United States. At the same time, by the way, as the US federal government was ignoring the unfolding AIDS crisis in the US borders while tens of thousands of people died. They pointed the finger at Africans from Haiti and Africans from the continent and said, these people are bringing this in here. And then within the US borders, they demonized and dehumanized queer and trans people who were dying by the thousands from HIV and AIDS. So there's like a long-standing history, again, of the US intentionally and systematically destabilizing Haiti, creating conditions that force Haitians to flee their homes, and then those Haitians fleeing their homes being met by intense repression. We are living in a similar period now where, again, the US has continuously destabilized Haiti, where they have put in a series of puppet governments that have not been chosen by the Haitian people. Right now, the current iteration is I think it's called the Presidential Transitional Council, again, not selected by Haitians. All the representatives on that council were selected by the United States and other foreign powers to put into power. The Haitian people had nothing to do with it. There is armed gangs backed by the ruling elites, backed by foreign interveners who are terrorizing the Haitian population as the Haitian population attempts to rise up against those conditions. So again, you cannot understand anything about why migration happens from Haiti and why Haitians are treated the way they are without understanding that the US is intentionally doing this. And the reason why anti-Haitian rhetoric is so pervasive and so consistent is because they want to justify what they're doing. They want to make Haitians subhuman so that anything can be done to them. That is essentially the objective. And so I think what we have to do, those of us fighting in the belly of the beast against imperialism, for immigrant rights, for reproductive justice, have to resist that dehumanization, have to recognize the root causes, have to recognize that there is no issue that Haiti has that has not been made worse by imperialism, point blank, period. Oh, and then the last thing I'll say on that actually is that like that approach that the US government took to the HIV/AIDS crisis, where again, they were abandoning queer and trans people within their borders while blaming, scapegoating Africans and Haitians for bringing HIV into the United States. That is a consequence of a for-profit healthcare system in the United States, which exacerbated the spread of HIV and AIDS. It made the epidemic much worse while they were criminalizing and dehumanizing queer people for it. And they imposed the same system on Haiti itself, where they tied access to healthcare to money, to funds in a nation that is desperately poor. And so again, that created a situation where there were much, much, much worse health outcomes for Haiti as a direct consequence of US foreign intervention and the imposition of capitalism on the island.
Yes, fire. Yes, fire, Onye. And I think I maybe also want to add a little bit about, a kind of recent events, a recent change in U.S. immigration policy in which the U.S. has ended temporary protected status for Haitian people, effective, I think, September 1st or 2nd. And this is a status that is a legal status that 500,000 people hold and will now no longer hold as of September. So this is going to create a whole new wave of undocumented Haitians and a whole new wave of Haitians who are going to have a harder time accessing services, from healthcare to just everything. So for those of you who do live in communities that have large Haitian populations, mutual aid is always important, but it's going to become even more so, I think, in light of this ending of temporary protected status. So South Florida folks, maybe connect with Miami Workers Center or FAM. I think it stands for Femme Haitienne dans Miami. So, just for those of us who do have the privilege and pleasure of being embedded in Haitian community, or at least being approximate to Haitian community in the places that we live, just, we have a little bit of advance notice to start to be able to support our TPS holding community members who are soon going to be without status.
Thanks, y'all. I really appreciate that. And also for y'all who aren't aware, Black migrants, particularly Haitians, actually have higher rates of deportation when you look at the demographics and statistics, right? And so this is our struggle. This is everyone's struggle. And there's a particular way we're naming that Haitians are impacted. In the interest of time, I think we have time for maybe about 2 more questions. And I'm going to kind of put 2 in 1 because y'all are some of the most brilliant people I know, so I know y'all can handle it. This campaign is called Fund Abortion, Not War, and it's all about making connections to the multitude of ways that Zionism, the Zionist project called Israel, is impacting the lives, and how many of our resources are funding our state caters to continuing war and occupation instead of helping those of us right here in the US and elsewhere. And so, Jemima, in the past, you and others have referred to Haiti as Empire's laboratory, the laboratory of empire. And this is a phrase that is very similar to when people are talking about Palestine as well. So I'm wondering if, one, you could kick us off with sort of explaining this phrase and then putting Palestine and Haiti in conversation together, some of the similarities of struggles or any kind of entangled history. And then 2, something that hasn't been touched on, but I think this is the perfect time to throw it in there as well, is the Dominican Republic and the relationship of the fascist regime in the Dominican Republic, which is essentially an occupying force on the island, as it relates to Haitians and Dominicans of Haitian descent. So maybe we can start with you, Jemima, and then I'm going to let you popcorn it to whoever wants to go next.
Yeah, when I talked about Haiti as Empire's laboratory, it's actually really interesting to think about that through the political process. One of the things that Haiti demonstrated is that how the U.S. was able to get others to do, how empire got others to do its work, right? So Haiti was one of the first. So, the U.S. came up with something called the Global Fragilities Act in 2019, where it was about a shift in the empire's strategy, where they use others, it was bringing together the Department of State, the Department of Defense, and USAID to actually do the dirty work of the U.S. government. And so you use the aid network, you use the Department of Defense, Department of State, military, and so on. But also you use in the Caribbean, you use captive states. So, Jamaica, Barbados, Guyana, these are captive states to actually do the dirty work. And I say Haiti is a laboratory because the occupation in 2004, what's unique about it is the first time what I call the multilateral imperialism. People always think multilateralism is a good thing, but with the occupation of Haiti, you got the entire UN to actually run the occupation of Haiti. You have all these nations participating in the occupation of Haiti, saying that they're doing something good for Haiti. But, in the WikiLeaks papers, what ended up happening was they're saying that this was the best policy. The minister occupation of Haiti was the best thing for the US because it was cheap and it got all the countries along the side to participate in it, for cheap, or, to participate so that they wouldn't have to put their soldiers up front. So they were able to use, there were countries, Rwanda, Malaysia, Nepal, all these people participated in the occupation of Haiti. So even now, the UN office in Haiti has just been taken over by a Mexican person, even though Mexico has, a presumably progressive government. And so they were able to do that and basically pass off the dirty work of empire through using the apparatuses of the people in the region. And I think that's an important thing, and that's an important shift because you're able to basically get the dirty work done, and that you see happening. And so Haiti comes, I have to say, also right after Iraq, the Iraq invasion happens. Haiti comes right after the Iraq invasion, where the Europe and the U.S. really were split. And it was through Haiti that they made up, right? It was after I don't know if people are not old, maybe people might not be young and old enough to remember that there was a major, the U.S. was so angry with the French. Remember they used to call French fries freedom fries and all this because Europe and then it was through Haiti that all these states made up. Canada, France, and the U.S. came together to run this and then to pass it through the UN Security Council to make it seem like Haiti, and they said this, was a problem for world security. Right. Haiti was a problem for international security and so on. So the U.S. has been using Haiti as this and also controlling the elections. Right. So Hillary Clinton, for example, flew into Haiti in 2010 and changed the election results. It installed a president. You have the UN core group that actually makes decisions after the president was assassinated. It's the core group that decided who will be the prime minister of Haiti. And now what you have is the U.S. going all the way 12,000 miles away to Kenya to bring in foreign occupation forces, leaving out people, for example, with an ALBA, the people that could actually really help Haiti are Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua. They're left out of that conversation, right? So the U.S. will bring in mercenaries from Kenya and uses CARICOM, right? Because it is CARICOM that basically with the U.S. handpicked this so-called presidential council that we have now, with Mia Mottley, the little darling of the West, who thought she was going to get the UN Secretary General job, right? She basically did the dirty work for the U.S. in actually forcing whoever was chosen to be part of the Presidential Council to then say that they agreed to foreign international intervention. So this is what I mean by laboratory. So the U.S. basically uses Haiti because the way that they use multilateralism as a way to further imperial strategies. The thing I wanted to say about the Dominican Republic, there are two things. I want to follow what Marina says. The anti-Haitianism is not just the U.S. and just the Dominican Republic. The entire Caribbean has anti-Haitian policies. Members of the CARICOM have some of the most draconian anti-immigration laws against Haitians. I have family in Guadeloupe. I know how they treat Haitians in Martinique and Guadeloupe. And so we can talk about the DR, but we can also talk about these Black countries, the Jamaicans, the people in Barbados, these governments, how Haiti, as a member of CARICOM, the Caribbean community, is the only country that needs a visa to travel to another CARICOM countries, even though it is a member of CARICOM. Haiti did not become a member of CARICOM. CARICOM is 50 years old. Haiti did not become a member of CARICOM till, early 2006 or 2004, or no, early 2000s, right? So you have that, right? And so part of that, we have to think about the anti-Haitianism in the region. But the Dominican Republic has a very vivid history. Remember, there was a massacre of Haitians in 1937 by the right-wing Dominican government. And that's really, what we see happening now. We can see a similar massacre on its way to happening. And it's important to think about this because they denationalized 250,000 Dominicans back in 2013. And it's gotten worse lately with Abinader, the white supremacist, who basically also uses IDF, Israeli intelligence and technology for its so-called border patrol. So the U.S. Border Patrol, Israeli Border Patrol are on the border, to actually keep Haitians out or whatever they're doing. And so there's a very clear, direct link between what Israel is providing militarily for the Dominican Republic and its treatment of Haitian people. And I do think it's important to make those connections because Palestine represents a laboratory in a different way, though similar, because that's where they try all their military equipment, right? They try the complete taking away of people's sovereignty, but in addition to like using it as a laboratory for all kinds of violence and military equipment, and to see how much they can get away from
timeline, right?
as we're watching the side unfold. And so I'm gonna stop there, but it is important to think about how the Israeli state actually works in that. And I want to just quickly say, in 1948, when the UN basically stole the Palestinian land and created this Zionist colony, Haiti was on the voting committee, and Haiti was forced by the U.S. to change its vote to vote on behalf of the creation of the Zionist state. And so I just think it's important to actually even know this, how far this goes by, how much U.S. imperialism has impacted even decisions the Haitian government has made from the past to the present.
Thank you for that. And I just want to reiterate, first off, fire emojis in the chat, y'all. I said I'm going to live off my Twitch streamer reality today. Fire emojis in the chat. But you said over 500,000 Dominicans of Haitian descent. And I want to remind people the DR and Haiti share an island, and the DR is essentially a Spanish occupation on the island. Those 500,000 DR citizens were denaturalized. They had their naturalized citizenship removed. And in the last year, they have promised to deport an alleged 10,000 Haitians and Dominicans of Haitian descent per every week. That's their quota they espoused. Whether that's humanly possible, obviously, is for question. But that's like a really important point that I just want to make sure we reiterate. But I want to pass it to One and Marina as well to continue on this phenomenal thread.
Yeah, I mean, Jemima said it, and the only additional thing I'd say is that the whole island is Haiti, and the Dominican Republic was founded as a counter-revolutionary tactic to go for Haiti. The whole thing is Haiti.
Period. I think maybe the last thing that I want to add is that what we're seeing in Palestine is in some ways also what we've been seeing in Haiti for the past 200 years, this outside narrative of, as a cautionary tale, this outside narrative of this is what happens when you try to take your freedom. This is what happens when you fight for your liberation. So I think that's why anti-Haitian sentiment is so strong in the Caribbean, not just in the DR, like Jemima said. Also, here in Martinique, people, when we talk about independence, we're literally a colony. And when we talk about independence, people say, but we don't want to be like Haiti. And, that's the function that the anti-Haitian sentiment serves. Haiti has been so brutally beaten down over the past 221 years. And before that, before its independence, that the people who are doing the beating down, the imperialist forces, do not want people to see freedom as an option. And that's also what's happening in Palestine. So, I think we just have to resist that narrative any and every way we can, because it's the same narratives that accompanies the repression of any liberation struggle.
Thanks, Shaw. I really appreciate that. And did anyone have anything else on this connection between Palestine, Zionism, and Haiti that you want to touch on before I move on to our final question? All right, cool. I don't want to stop the fire while it's flowing because that's how your hands get burnt, So I want to wrap us up kind of coming full circle, because while we have, of course, discussed the crisis of imperialism in Haiti, the similarities between Haiti and Palestine, the long history and present struggles, I want us to also think forward about what movement looks like, what solidarity looks like. And so, one, I guess, what are the biggest lessons that we can take away from the struggle to liberate Haiti and to this struggle more broadly? And then two, it wraps in that is what are the current movements around supporting Haitians both in Haiti and throughout the diaspora that people should be attuned to? What does reproductive justice look like for Haitians? What does bodily autonomy look like for Haitians? And ultimately, of course, the reason we're all here is what does liberation look like for Haiti and for Haitian? And I'll pass it to whoever wants to start.
Okay, there's two BAP. I guess I'm a BAP, APRPs and BAP. I just want to shout out the Zone of Peace campaign, specifically for the tactic of organizing grassroots forces transnationally in the Western Hemisphere against US imperialism, against NATO, against the exact kind of former domination and intervention that has destabilized Haiti for so long, because that is what it's going to take, particularly for those of us engaged in social justice movements in the United States around reproductive justice, around bodily autonomy, around struggles against patriarchy, for women and queer liberation. We have to internationalize those struggles, and we have to understand the root cause of systems of oppression, of our conditions of exploitation as queer and trans people, as women, as immigrants, as Africans, is in fact imperialism, that there's nothing more homophobic, queer antagonistic, ableist than economic sanctions on a civilian population, than foreign intervention that destabilizes democratically elected governments, than ruling elites backing armed gangs that terrorize populations for organizing politically. Like, we cannot be fighting for reproductive justice. We cannot be fighting for women's liberation and feminism if we are not also fighting imperialism. We desperately need to internationalize our social justice movements in the United States. Otherwise, we are constantly going to be treating the symptoms of the problem and not the actual problem. The root cause is imperialism. It affects us across borders. And the Zone of Peace campaign is so powerful because it calls for us to organize across borders, to unify across borders, to address it. And so I just wanted to uplift it because I'm so impressed by it. And I feel like it needs to spread throughout the hemisphere.
Jemima or Marina?
I guess I just wanted to, 100% what Onye just said. Imperialism is the primary contradiction, as we always say. And we cannot, as I started, like, there's no way Haitians have not even had time to actually, grieve, to actually take stock, because it's just been the onslaught, 200 years of an onslaught of a counter revolution. And I do think we need to take that into account. I think it's also important to remember, to realize that even the proliferation of this gang violence is a response to Haitian protests. And we have to remember, up until 2022, Haitians were in the streets protesting everything, and they managed to use the violence to curb the protest. But we also know that Haiti comes through, right? And the protests will continue. And even though we see them being silenced, we have to remember, for example, one of the greatest stories is the canal movement that was happening in the northern part of Haiti, where without state support or whatever, the Haitians are able to build a canal by themselves in the north, when the Dominican Republic was basically trying to remove water from their farms. I don't know if you all remember this canal movement, where the people in the rural areas actually built the canal by themselves through the help, some monetary help for the diaspora, but they came together and built a canal that got the water to water their farms in northern Haiti. And so, to me, the root of the struggle in Haiti is actually in the rural areas, because people there have been surviving and have been doing all kinds of things to push against whatever, to push against the ongoing disasters that they're imposing on the country. And that's what the majority of the people are. The majority of the Haitian people are in the rural areas, are outside of Port-au-Prince. Haiti is a country of 12 million people. 2 million of them are in Port-au-Prince. And we have to think about that. And we think about the grassroots movement. Even in the Port-au-Prince area, there's small movements like Molega, which is like a radical movement. It's also a member of the Black Alliance for Peace. We also have the people that work with Via Campesina along the side. You also have international organizations that actually do some decent work, like the IJDH, Institute for Justice and Democracy in Haiti, And so we have these groups that work there to make sure, that Haitian self-determination and sovereignty come through. But the most important thing that we need is decolonization. We need to remove these foreigners from our land. We need to get our people in the global South to stop participating in the oppression of Haitians. We need to remove Mexicans. We need to remove Kenyans. We need to remove all these people out of Haiti. And we need to tell them to stop being lackeys for U.S. imperialism. And I think that's the most important thing we can do, especially those of us outside of the U.S. who are living in these spaces. Tell the CARICOM countries to really stop being the imperialist lackeys. And so we need to work with that. And we need to, in the belly of the beast, to push our governments to actually stop its ongoing intervention and occupation of Haiti. So liberation means decolonization for Haiti, because if Haiti isn't free, none of us is free.
I don't have much to add. I can't really follow. If Haiti isn't free, none of us are free. But I did also want to highlight Jemima's point about just Haitian grassroots organizations. Like, I don't want to replicate the kind of US aid narrative of solutions for Haiti need to come from outside. All the solutions that Haiti needs are inside of Haiti and are being thought of right now. We just need to listen and support financially and intellectually. So I do think rural agrarian organizations of farm workers, like those are, I think, the Tuya Campesina organizations in Haiti and some of the biggest grassroots food sovereignty organizations. They are the ones who are doing the on-the-ground work of feeding people. There's also been an ongoing teacher strike in Haiti as well for most of this year, because the teachers haven't been paid, but also, they're protesting the conditions in which it's actually, they're using very much using reproductive justice language to protest the conditions in which children are being brought up under the violence of daily life in Port-au-Prince especially, but in other cities in Haiti, as conditions in which children can't learn and thrive and they can't do their jobs. So just paying attention to those organizations and the calls that they put out, I think, is actually the most important thing we can do in diaspora.
Thanks, y'all. I appreciate every single thing that was raised. This has been so informative, but we're not done yet. So I would like for us, we have a second poll. So some of y'all came a little late, which is okay, because I know everyone on this panel runs on CPT, myself included. So at the beginning of the conversation, we asked folks to rank themselves with a poll on how much you feel like you know about the Haitian struggle for sovereignty and liberation. And we have another poll I want to do before we close out, and we're going to close out with some specific calls to action as well. And so if you could give me maybe like a thumbs up reaction to make sure folks can see this poll. The question is, did you learn a lot about Haitian struggles and reproductive justice? And maybe if you got to answer the first one, think about if your answer has changed from then to now, right? We've been together for only about an hour and some change yet. Also, Marina, if you could type in the chat the names of the organizations you named, because me and Marie, shout out to us, we've been going with the links all night, but I don't speak French, I'm gonna be honest with you. So I couldn't get you on that one. All right, so the poll has about 10 more seconds. I'm seeing a lot of people are saying, we got about 30% of people saying can't wait to incorporate this information into your current organizing. That is the goal and that is the hope. It's not just that you come and learn about Haiti and say that was fun and then go home. It's that you can actually learn how to incorporate this history and these struggles you're learning about and the unique ways Haitians are impacted into whatever organizing you're already doing. If that is reproductive justice, we've named many ways that it relates, that the Haitian struggle relates to reproductive struggles. If it's migration, if it's Black liberation work, find a way to connect the struggle for Haitian liberation into what you're already doing. So I'm looking at the poll now while Marie pulls up our final slides. A few of you still have some questions, which is fine. So if you do, type them in the chat and we're gonna have a quick 5-minute Q&A, maybe 5 to 10 minutes after some slides. Some said this built onto what I already knew it's actually really even spread across the board. Y'all, a variety of feelings and emotions. I see we got an emotional crew tonight, which seems like we learned a lot. A good 26% of y'all said your mind was blown by the information that you learned. I love to hear that. And then many of you said that it helps you connect some dots. So thanks y'all for participating in the polls. And we're going to have just some quick calls to action. And again, if there's any outstanding questions that you have, put them in the chat and we'll try to pull them out as we come up towards close. We're going to close out with Q&A and these call to actions. So I just wanted to name some organizations that you can support. A few of them you can even join yourself, as well as some media. As we said before, right, there's many myths and propaganda narratives about Haiti, especially as it relates to gangs and instability, and this persistent myth in the West that Haitians just can't govern themselves for reasons that only the West seems to know. And so a few of the organizations, and these are not conclusive by any means, right? Many were also named in this discussion. One of them is the Caribbean Solidarity Network. There's the Haiti Action Committee, the Black Alliance for Peace. Black Alliance for Peace also, by the way, if you are an organization, you can sign on to the alliance. It's an alliance of organizations and individuals. There's also the BAP Solidarity Network, which is for non-Black or non-African people and organizations who want to join in solidarity and help support BAP. There's Molagoff, which is the organization Jemima was just mentioning, which does a lot of on-the-ground political work in Port-au-Prince and across Haiti. Compas de la Diaspora is a Dominican Republic or a Dominican descendant organization that fights essentially to decolonize the island and to lend solidarity from the Dominican side and perspective. And then there's Como Coda, which is a collective of essentially Haitian elders that have almost weekly at this point a protest outside the DR consulate in New York City. And if y'all are on this page, take a screenshot, pull your phone out, take a picture, and then you literally just hit a Google search on each of these and figure out how you can support it. It's that simple. There's also Black Agenda Report, for which Jemima is one of the editors there. Haiti Info Project gives up-to-date, minute-by-minute, almost at this point, updates on Twitter. People's Dispatch, Kasatchouan News, which covers Latin America, but does great coverage of Haiti. There's a radio program that broadcasts weekly called Haiti, Our Revolution Continues. And then, of course, Revolutionary African Perspectives on WRFG ATL. And then if we go to the next slide. Oh, someone needs to mute their line. We go to the next slide, Mary. There we go. So one of the organizations that I mentioned, Compas de la Diaspora, they have actually launched a call to boycott the DR. As you know, the DR is a really popular tourist destination for people from the US. However, that infrastructure of tourism is literally built on the occupation of Haiti and the mass exploitation of Haitians and Dominicans of Haitian descent and darker skinned Dominicans in general, right? And so you can find this organization, La Diaspora. We even have a comrade in the chat, Steph, who's a member. They do a lot of great work, but they've asked them and other organizations, I should say, have called for a boycott of the DR. And so if we're thinking about BDS movement, boycotts, supporting these larger struggles, this is just one action that you can take is like when you hear your cousins saying they're about to go on their weekend trip to the DR, tell them that the DR is quite literally formulating strategies to target pregnant Haitian women inside of Dominican Republican hospitals and deport them, right? That is something that I wanted to highlight at this point too, is a tactic that the DR government has began doing in the last few months, and the numbers are extremely high, is literally going into maternity wards and targeting either Haitians, women and pregnant people, or those who have just had a newborn for deportation. This is a really disgusting tactic that flies in the face of reproductive justice, and it kind of ties together exactly the threads that we've been talking about tonight. And I think that might have been the last slide. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, there's one more. Yes. And so Also, of course, just to continue supporting the Fund Abortion Not War campaign, we, of course, as was stated at the beginning, we're trying to raise money for the abortion funds who have faced repression and loss of funding and other strong pushback for doing exactly this kind of work right here, for speaking out against genocide, Zionism, occupation. And you can go to fundabortionnotwar.org, and we've put together a page where you can donate to 4 different abortion funds at one time with one donation. So you don't have to do 4 different donations. And so just to close, I wanted to get those call to actions first. I tricked you, right? To keep y'all around to hear the calls to action. I want to ask if there's any questions, to put them in the chat now. We can close out by doing some Q&A. I know there was one in the chat, which I see our panelists already kind of responded to, but I'll lift up this one, and we're going to take just about this last 10 minutes for Q&A. And it is, why do you think Palestine is getting more attention than Haiti? Not that their liberation isn't tied together, but I rarely see it. Would anyone like to start on that one?
I can go ahead and start since I didn't respond in the chat, but then I can, I guess, let Jemima and Onye kind of reiterate their answers verbally. But I think something that wasn't, I agree with what was brought up in the chat, but something that was not brought up in the chat was, I think, some of the complexities around the role of the Haitian elite in what is happening in Haiti. I think people don't love to visually see Black people harming other Black people, and might not necessarily understand that as a liberation struggle, though it is rooted, obviously, in U.S. imperialism for all of their U.S. French imperialism as well. All of the things that we've been talking about throughout this hour are the root cause. But I think the complexities of the fact that the people holding guns are other Black people, I think in some ways makes it a less popular liberation struggle than the very distinctly drawn lines between Palestinians and Israeli settlers.
Thank you for that.
I also do think there's a genocide going on in Palestine, and there's a way, to see children being blown to bits, children being shot in the groin, decapitated children. It's right now. I think that's what's happening. I think in the past, I think going back to the answers in the question in the past, it's always I think you're right in terms of so-called black and black crime, right? Like it doesn't. But Haiti is very unique in that the only time Haiti shows up in the news is when when they need to pass a UN resolution, and so it's very calculated in how Haiti was in news and Haiti. So that's a long history of U.S. representations of Haiti. That's why they don't care. But I also think, I wrote this article a long time ago called "The Leftism of the Americas Collapses at the Door of Haitian Sovereignty," which is, like, people don't talk about Haiti even in the region. And even the leftist governments don't pay attention to Haiti, or don't, when they have their, they go along with whatever the U.S. says. And so outside of Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela, you have everyone going along with with not dealing with Haiti at all, or participating in Haiti's oppression. And so I think there's a historical thing to it. I think there's also the fact that the only reason, Haiti's always fighting back. And I think people don't want to hear about that. The only it's still sovereign, even though I know it's under occupation. It's more sovereign than all the other states there because they're captured states. Haiti's not a fully captured state yet, which is the problem, right? But all solidarity to the Palestinian people. Sorry, my child's calling. All solidarity to the Palestinian people who are living through a brutal genocide that has massacred hundreds, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's hundreds of thousands of people. So I think we need to think about that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And immense and eternal, endless solidarity to the Palestinian people, the Palestinian resistance, the Palestinian struggle for liberation. There was one more. Someone said, I know we kind of already touched on this, but maybe can start with you, Oni, if you want to just maybe reiterate. What are the key differences between paramilitary groups versus gangs in Haiti?
I don't know, I would say branding, because it's oftentimes like the same forces in both, like former police officers, for example, of military governments who will lead the government and then move into these paramilitary gangs or paramilitary forces or the gang. So really it's just a matter of who's talking about them and how they want to spin it, because there's a lot of overlap in who's in there.
Definitely. Y'all got one more question, one more minute to type any questions in the chat. One more minute. Then I gotta feed my cat. My cat is all about Haitian liberation and she's hungry. So also I'll remind folks we are recording and we'll send out the recording, and me and Marie will also try to catalog every single link that we've put all throughout the night into the chat and try to send that out to folks. Also would like to remind people we're going to have a discussion on the Congolese liberation and reproductive justice, and then Sudan as well. The Congo, I believe, will be July 28th, inshallah. And Sudan in August. I cannot quite remember. So if you registered for this event, you should also get reminders for the following events as well, but we'll talk about Congo and Sudan. One last question. Nina is asking, can you share any resources on international adoption out of Haiti? I'm not too sure about that one.
That we have to be careful. There's after the earthquake, there was a lot of child trafficking out of Haiti. There's been quite a number of people convicted of sexual exploitation of children that they took from Haiti. And so we also have to be careful about that. But I don't have any specific ideas about that.
I just want to follow up. So the person clarified and said critical response to international adoption out of Haiti. Thank you for clarifying. So I'm going to wrap these two questions in one. So kind of critical thoughts on international adoption out of Haiti. I think, Jemima, you kind of just touched on the child trafficking. And then someone said, what can the Haitian diaspora do to help with what is going on? And then we'll close with those 2 points right there.
I feel like the colonization frame that Jemima was like very clear and intentional about pushing helps us understand this question, because even if we look at like the genocide against indigenous people in Turtle Island, if we look at the enslavement of African people in the Western Hemisphere, you see like this continuous trend of like separating children from their families and attempting to forcibly assimilate them into the culture of the colonizer in order to weaken the overall colonized nation. And so I think that you have to understand adoption out of Haiti, adoption out of any country targeted by imperialism or any colonized nation as like an extension of that very, very old colonial strategy. That's why we all made a face when we read the question initially, because it is part of the tactic of destabilizing Haiti, of destroying Haitian culture, of destroying Haitian resistance, is taking the children away. In terms of specific sources, I hope that someone comes through with some links. I don't have any off the top of my head beyond like that broader analysis of understanding that as a tactic of imperialism, straight up stealing kids.
All right, y'all. Well, I think that is us coming to a close. Jemima, did you have something to add?
I did. Just one more thing to read. What can the diaspora do? I just think, repeating Anya again, is Haiti's under occupation. So Haiti's been under occupation for 21 years, since 2004. And until we understand that, everything that's happening to Haiti is while we still have a UN office in Haiti that started the occupation. And so if we don't understand that, we can't find a solution to what's going on to understanding what's going on in Haiti. And I think that's very important. We need to end the occupation.
Absolutely. I appreciate that so much. And I just dropped a link in the chat, and this is on the Black Alliance for Peace's website, but it includes fact sheets, one-pagers, articles, webinars, podcasts, zines, the Zone of Peace campaign. It literally includes a lot. And a lot of what the 3 people you see on this screen have contributed also to this page and supporting creating these resources as well. And so check out that page. Make sure you save it, bookmark it, send it to 5 people, por favor. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up on the close. I want to really, really thank you, Onye, Jemima, and Marina, for your time. This has been phenomenal. And I know everyone in the chat is talking about how much they have learned. And I'm really, really looking forward also to sharing this recording and having the second afterlife of this conversation continue. And so With that, I'm going to say no compromise, no retreat. A decolonized and free Haiti is our path forward for liberation. A free Palestine is our path forward for liberation and global Black revolution. With that, peace, y'all.
Peace. Thank you. No compromise, no retreat.